In other news this week, Washington, D.C.-based investigative reporter Jeffrey Scott Shapiro dropped a bombshell revelation about the 9/11 false flag event in an otherwise withering attack on former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura. The collapse of World Trade Center Building 7 has been doggedly avoided in the mainstream media because the 47-story steel-framed office tower fell directly into its own footprint at 5:20 p.m. on that day, with even the government-appointed NIST having to admit that a significant portion of that collapse happened at free-fall acceleration. This is problematic for the official conspiracy theory of 9/11, as the building was not hit by a plane and suffered less damage in the collapse of the Twin Towers than buildings that were closer to these towers and yet remain standing. It has long been known that Larry Silverstein, who profited to the tune of $4.5 billion in insurance payouts from the destruction of all three buildings, has admitted talking to the fire commanders about pulling the building, a term he claims referred to pulling firefighters out of the building rather than the demolition industry term for taking a building down through controlled demolition. Now, Mr. Shapiro has given further violation that Silverstein was speaking specifically about controlled demolition on that day. Writing on FoxNews.com, Shapiro notes, quote, "Shortly before the building collapsed, several NYPD officers and Con Edison workers told me that Larry Silverstein, the property developer of One World Financial Center, was on the phone with his insurance carrier to see if they would authorize the controlled demolition of the building since its foundation was already unstable and expected to fall." End quote. There is no indication how such a feat was going to be accomplished, as controlled demolitions of large office towers take weeks to set up and would be physically impossible to accomplish in a burning building in one day. The logical conclusion is that the charges were in fact already in place, and the order merely had to be given for the building to be taken down.
You hear that? Keep your eye on that building, it'll be coming down.
The building is about to blow up. Moving back.
Alright guys, sorry.
We are looking back. There's a building about to blow up. On flame, debris coming down.
Just in the last few seconds, another building, building number 7, one of the buildings in support of the World Trade Center towers, has collapsed. This is no small building, as you can see, at 47 stories. It would stand out in most American cities.
The controlled corporate media has yet to pick up on this revelation. Finally this week, the controlled demolition of Greece continues apace as the Greek government yields to the wishes of international finance capital and begins a series of crippling austerity measures in preparation for a bailout from the EU and the IMF. Now, the Greek people are once again taking to the streets to protest their government's moves to make them accountable for their government's own duplicity.
Riot police clash with protesters in Greece as the country teeters on the brink of economic disaster. Greece's main public sector union brought nurses, teachers and other workers onto the streets of the capital, Athens. They're angry at government austerity measures introduced in a bid to cut the country's mountain of debt. Police fired tear gas at left-wing protesters as tempers boiled over. Greece owes €300 billion, and the possibility it could default on international loans has caused markets to falter across the Eurozone. Now the country's asking its EU partners and the IMF for €45 billion. That's about £39 billion. If the rescue package is agreed, it will be the biggest bailout of an entire country ever attempted.
The current Greek crisis was brought about with help from Goldman Sachs, who helped to cook the books of the Greek government so that it could join the EU monetary union in the first place. Now, the troubles brought about by the Greek crisis threaten to destabilize the EU itself, with international predatory institutions like the IMF likely to be the largest beneficiaries. Now, stay tuned for episode 129 of the Corbett Report, Kalia and the Stellar Wind, where we talk to Rebecca Jeske of EFF.org and John Young of Cryptome.org about the broader history and institutional framework of illegal government surveillance of the US population.